Hello, Mr. Vona. This is Ryan Yee presenting his uh, screencast on James Thurber's style. So let's get it started. Hello, Mr. Vona. My name is Ryan Yee again, and I will be talking about James Thurber's writing style. A little bit about James Thurber is that he was born on December 8th, 1894, and he died November 2nd, 1961. James Thurber was a middle child of three brothers, which is pretty important because that kind of affected how he wrote, at least how I think he wrote. Uh, and I'll tell you a little more later on why I think that it was a big effect. James Thurber also attended public school in Columbus, Ohio. He was a bright student, but he didn't really apply himself. And then later on in college, he went to the Ohio State University, but he ended up dropping out before he graduated, and that kind of just goes back to him not applying himself, and he was just a careless student, which kind of sucks. Anyway, so a little bit more about James Thurber is that later on, this is way down the road, but James Thurber was widely regarded as one of the most important American humorists in the 20th century. He was first known as a humorist. No one really took his writing too seriously. Not like that they didn't like his writing. It's just that they looked at James Thurber and thought that he was more of like a comedy guy and couldn't really take on serious topics until he wrote The Catbird Seat in 1940. And that's when people really started to pay attention to him and really took him seriously. So, yeah. Now, a little bit about James Thurber's life. As a child, he was really unpopular. And now, back to what I was saying before and how it's important that he was a middle child is because his brother Will actually shot him in the eye with an arrow, and that led to him being unpopular because James Thurber was not able to participate in sports and other activities, which led to him being more creative minded, and that led to him being such a good writer. But that came from his childhood, and I think that also carries on to like his writing style, which I'll show you later. But what's also pretty cool is a fun fact is that James Thurber was shot in the eye from his brother Will when he was 6 years old, and then now in 1942, which would be around like 30 something years after James Thurber got shot in the eye, um, Thurber wrote The Catbird Seat, and he was nearly blind when he wrote this story. So he had a lot of help from using big paper and a good secretary. So now Thurber started as a writer. Thurber started his writing when he was in college. Well, not really in college, but he started writing, but it was mostly humorous pieces when he was writing for the campus paper and literary magazines at the Ohio State. After he dropped out of the Ohio State, he worked as a code clerk, reporter, columnist, and a correspondent for many numerous newspapers, and that all kind of adds up to him being a writer. And actually, I had to look up what a code clerk was, and I'm pretty sure is someone who like types stuff up at when you're in court because everything needs to be like written. So basically, all of his jobs were writing, and that all kind of added up to him being such a good writer in the end. Uh, you know, um, but actually, that was the beginning of his life. And then what really made him into such a good writer was when he settled down in New York City. He was actually rejected a lot of times before he was finally accepted by the New Yorker, which is a magazine, a famous magazine in New York. And he was finally accepted. And once he was accepted by that company, he was shortly hired as a staff writer. And then this is really where he developed as a writer because he shared an office with E.B. White, and E.B. White really, excuse me, really helped him develop a cleaner and stronger writing style. And over the next decade, the two writers became the strongest influences on what is still known as the quote unquote New York style of writing. E.B. White really kind of inspired James Thurber to be the writer he is today. And yeah. So now a little bit about his writing style. James Thurber always writes his stories about like a weak male character who's quiet to himself and cunning. And you could see this in The Catbird Seat and in Secret Life of Walter Mitty. In The Catbird Seat, Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin, he's a quiet man who's just to himself, and he's a loyal worker to the FNS company. It's just that there's this lady, Miss Barrows, who comes in, and this is also another part of his writing style where he. Okay, well, anyway, we'll forget that about the woman, but on to like the weak male character, Mister Martin would be portrayed as a weak character. He's to himself. He's a hardworking guy, but as Miss Barrows in the story wants to take control of the company and fire Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin uses his cunning way and ends up backstabbing Miss Barrows and tricks Mr. Fitzweiler into getting her fired because she thinks he's crazy. Also in Secret Life of Walter Mitty, he's a kind of a weird guy, and he just doesn't fit in, I would say. And he is kind of subdued by his wife, who in the story is always really loud and obnoxious. And Walter Mitty always tries getting away from his life, who is kind of really boring, mundane, and to be honest, like crappy. He has daydreams, and then his wife kind of ruins it. But so as you can see in both of those stories, there's a weak male character and who doesn't really get out, and I think that is because his childhood. And as a child in his childhood, he really couldn't hang out with a lot of people, and he was probably a lot to himself. He was unpopular, and I think that has a lot to do with him being blinded. So I think that has a huge impact on his writing style. And now on his second writing style, I think James Thurber also always writes about a dominant woman. They're always portrayed as a loud, evil woman who has like a uh, secret kind of thing getting out for whoever. Right now, back again, it's in The Catbird Seat, Secret Life of Walter Mitty. In The Catbird Seat, Miss Barrows. She has been portrayed as loud, brailing woman who just is just so annoying and is always making a problem. And then also in Secret Life of Walter Mitty, the same thing. The wife is really loud and obnoxious, and women are always the ones that are messing things up for the men. And I think this has to do with his past marriages. Um, he was married twice, one to Athena Adams, which was troubled, and they ended in a divorce. Um, so I think that has a lot to do with him writing so misogynistically. And yeah, that's it. So thank you so much for paying attention. Bye bye.